In this video, I'm going to cover one of the biggest updates for launchpads and missiles in nuclear tech mode. Not only have the models for the launchpad and nuclear missiles changed, but they are also more performant, the missiles move faster now, they are more smooth, and there are other upgrades like in terms of new machines for the early game, for oil processing, etc. So I highly recommend you check out the chapters, the video chapters, if you want to skip to a specific section. So without any further ado, let's get straight into it. Let's start with the new models for Tier 0 and the Tier 4 missiles. So all of the Tier 4 missiles, which are the nuclear, thermonuclear, the tectonic and the Doomsday missile, are pretty big now. Like they are gigantic compared to before, and you can see that they don't really fit on the small launchpad that we had before. That's because we now have a new standard launchpad which is much bigger than the normal launchpad. That is why it has been renamed to the silo launchpad, because the smaller launchpad now is only used in most of the silos that you are going to build. The standard launchpad is a 9x9 multi-block structure right here, and this is going to change its shape based on what missile you are going to put in. Also, as you can see, it has requirements for not only power but also fuel. So each missile now uses a different fuel, like the Tier 0, the Tier 1 uses kerosene, hydrogen peroxide, Tier 2 missile will go with kerosene and hydrogen peroxide, Tier 3 kerosene and liquid oxygen, and finally the Tier 4 with jet fuel and liquid oxygen. Tier 0 missiles will come or will be crafted with fuel, so you don't really need to fuel them. So here's the model with a Tier 1 missile. Oh no, sorry, the Tier 0 missile. Oh, as you can see, pretty cool animations. And yeah, so that's the loading process of a Tier 0 missile. Here's one for the Tier 1. Next up, we have a Tier 2 missile. And coming to the bigger missiles now. Next, the Tier 3. Now the Tier 3 and Tier 4 loading process will take a bit more time compared to the Tier 0, 1 and 2. And finally, the biggest missile we have, the Tier 4 missile. So that was the loading process for all of the different missiles that we have. So let's launch one. I'm going to launch a Tier 3 missile that requires kerosene and liquid oxygen. And once you actually put in the liquid oxygen, you can see the effect that it is going to have outside the missile like this. So we have power, we have fuel, and there goes our missile. Now, if you noticed, the missile quickly accelerated. That's because the acceleration, the top acceleration of the missile was increased, and it now achieves its max speed after 3 seconds of flight. Coming to the silo hatches, we now also have a large silo hatch. The small silo hatch covered a 5x5 area and it was like 3 wide inside. This one covers a 7x7 area and is 5 wide on the inside. It is best when used with a bigger missile, like for example the Tier 3 missiles or Tier 4 missiles. So here I have a village with a bullseye. It's asking to get nuked. So to bypass the CIWS that it has, I'm going to launch 2 EMP missiles first. That should fry the CIWS system. Yep. And now with the CIWS disabled, let's launch a Doomsday missile because its performance was boosted. So the Doomsday missile, well, I'm going to speed this process up, but in general it took less than a minute even while I was recording to completely render all of the damage and the entire crater around it along with the fallout. So yeah, the performance of the Doomsday missile has increased by quite a bit. It no longer lags out your entire system like crazy. It used to do that before, but yeah, as I told you, a single minute is all it took for the Doomsday missile to render completely. Coming to fallout next. Fallout is now much darker in order to suit the crater, the salafite crater that is formed after nuclear explosion. So no longer is fallout the light gray color that it used to be before. It blends in perfectly with the new craters, and in creative mode, it will no longer affect you. Also, you can wash away fallout by using a chemical thrower with a liquid like water inside it. So yeah, fallout can now be washed away using water. Next up, we come to a machine called the Hydrotreater. It is used for progressing in terms of oil. Now this machine will desulfurize crude oil. So it requires power along with crude oil and liquid hydrogen to work. And also it requires the catalytic converter. It will give you desulfurized crude oil along with sour gas. So let's actually set this up quickly. The hydrogen that you need to supply is at 1 pressure unit. So you will need a compressor for this process. And once we have all of that, let's supply it with some crude oil. And then we can see the rate of consumption and production. With the catalytic converter in there, it is consuming 500 millibuckets per second of crude oil, giving us 900 millibuckets per second of desulfurized crude oil and 150 millibuckets per second of sour gas. Now, desulfurized crude oil will give you the same things as the vacuum heavy oil, but also it will give you reformate gas in addition. Also, the fractioning tower, when we are on the topic of oil, fractioning towers will now much faster, or I think twice as fast as they used to work before. The radial performance engine can be crafted, it is going to be removed. And also the HTR-1 carrier rocket is no more. So if you want to get a satellite into space, now Soyuz is the only option. The HTR carrier rocket is no more in the mod. Coming up next, some of the guns like the Samuel and 357 pistols have reload animations now. So that's pretty cool. And the super shotgun will now always be centered like it is in Doom. So you can massacre around your world as much as you want with the super shotgun now. And yeah, so that's it for some of the weapons. Coming next, we have the armors, and in armor we have the Mk.III Life Extender. This is an armor modification now, and it will increase your health by 25 points, and it can also be used alongside the other armor infusion, so you can now get it max value of what, 125. Once depleted, after some time of taking no damage, it will replenish again. So yeah, the Mk.III Life Extender is now an armor modification like this. Coming up next, we have the rare earth chunks, which will give us all of the powder, the boron powder, niobium powder, the zirconium splinters when processed in a centrifuge. So that's one way of directly obtaining these powders. And also the neodymium has now a bedrock ore variant. So you can directly process it like you process the other bedrock ores, but it doesn't have a big chain. You can process it normally to get the neodymium powder and then use it. Alright, coming up next we have Muffler. Now Muffler is a very simple crafting recipe. It doesn't occupy any upgrade slot. You can shift right click on a machine to install it, and now that machine won't make any noise. So yeah, as you can listen, the centrifuge isn't as loud as it was. You can use it on other machines as well, like the compressor for example. So just shift right click and here we go. So that's the muffler. Next up, we have the brick furnace. Now the brick furnace is a very simple crafting recipe. You can craft it like very early on, and it is a much faster variant of the normal furnace. So it will cook up glass, stone much faster, especially clay. Clay is like 4 times faster, and it will also make charcoal quickly compared to the normal furnace. And on top of that, it will also collect coal ash once the operation is done. So that's the brick furnace. Next we come to the Dwarven Pickaxe, another early game item crafted with 2 industrial grade copper, a single ingot of iron and 2 sticks. Now it has AoE. So useful for basically making tunnels and obtaining a lot of stone or cobblestone in the early game. Doesn't have a lot of durability. So yeah, it will break fairly quickly, but then again, it is a cheap recipe. So that's that. Finally, there are new light variants, 3 of them. We have the cage lamp, then we have the halogen floodlight, and finally the fluorescent lights. All of them are on by default and have inverted redstone option. So once you supply it with redstone signal, it will turn off. And yeah, that's the same for all of the other lights as well. In terms of all three of these, only the fluorescent light can be combined. Other than that, the remaining two, they can't be combined. So yeah, these are the new light variants. They look pretty good, or they will actually look pretty good in any industrial build. So yeah, that was it for this video. I tried to cover as much as I could. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please do smash that like button and also subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Now, if you have any questions or any suggestions, please leave them in the comment section down below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Peace out and stay safe.